What are some early childhood education programs in the state of Maine?
Well, one of the more important programs is what's called home visiting or parent coaching or family strengthening. This is a program where when a mom is pregnant during the prenatal period, often she can use home visiting services and dad. And a home visitor will come into the home and help mom prepare and dad prepare to be parents. But after the baby is born, it's really important that parents have support. And so again, the home visitor can help mom and dad with some issues involving raising an infant, everything from breastfeeding to how to care for the physical health of an infant. But also, one of the more important things is the home visitor can look for problems in the home. There may be toxins, or maybe alcohol or tobacco. There may be some issues with respect to anger management from one of the parents. Could be some domestic abuse, and to try to help the parents be good parents. I don't know, a lot of people think, we're born with good parenting skills. We're not. It's learned behavior. And when you grow up, if your dad and mom were not the best of parents, or if your dad abused your mom or whatever, then that's a problem. Little boys who grow up in homes where dad abuses mom or mom's boyfriend abuses mom are 4 times more likely to abuse their spouses. So what happens during those early years are so critical. Again, the child needs consistent, stable adult caregiving, and that's important, and that's what the home visitor helps mom and dad understand. The child needs to be stimulated with all the senses. Just letting a child lie there or watch TV is not the answer. And then also a child needs low stress and also low anxiety. So these are things that are taught, and this is what I call, it's parent coaching, helping young families, and particularly young families. That's so important. Another thing is the mentoring programs that we have with maybe older parents helping younger parents, showing them some of the parenting skills. This is so important. One of the other things that's critical is quality child care. Now, we have a real shortage of quality child care in the state, what I mentioned earlier, when I was a little boy under 5 years old, about 7 out of 10 little boys and girls under 5 had one parent at home. Usually it was mom, so mom was home with you. Today that's different. Today, in 2008 in the state of Maine, about 70%, 7 out of 10 little boys and girls under 5 have all parents working. And so there needs to be child care. And it's a problem. We have a shortage. And so one of the things that we really need to focus on is making sure that parents have affordable, accessible, quality child care for their children. I wanted to also mention that children who experience high-quality early care and education are more likely to have good physical, mental, and emotional health. They're more likely when they grow up to have better jobs, higher education. They're less likely to engage in drug abuse or to engage in criminal activities. Or have, for example, teen pregnancies are much lower with children who had quality early childhood experiences. So it's so important that we focus on that. I wanted to show you a chart here. This shows here the child care situation in the state of Maine. Now, we only have about 13,500 babies born each year, Justin, in the state. Back in 1960, there were 22,000 babies born in Maine. So we've gone down. I mean, as you know, our population is stable. It's about 1.3 million. Mm-hmm. We're an older state. Our fastest growing age group is people 65 to 74. Mm-hmm. So we have few babies. We only have about 67,000 babies under 5. Of those, about 47,000, as you can see here, need child care during the day. We have a shortage. These are the actual licensed slots that we have, and you can see that's under 25,000. So the difference here, that's the shortage in child care, in licensed child care that we have. So one of the things I think we really need to focus on is early care and education. It's one of the most important jobs of being an early child care educator. Another chart I want to show is one of the problems we have. I mentioned earlier that 90% of structural brain growth is complete by kindergarten. Well, this is a brain growth curve. That red curve is a brain growth curve. Mm-hmm. And as you can see, this is probably right here about age 5. These are the salaries. This is the college and the university professor salaries in Maine, it's a little over $60,000 a year with, for 9.5 months of instruction, and then good benefits, good retirement. This is for the K through 12 teachers, about $41,000 a year, same thing. And then you have the folks who work under the part of the curve where 90% of brain growth occurs. These are the early educators. The average salary in Maine is about $20,000. That's for 12 months, not 9.5, and hardly any benefits, and certainly no retirement plans. So I really think we ought to look at this. We need to really value early childhood care more highly. It's not, this just isn't government's problem, it's society's. We don't seem to value early care and education, and we're paying for it. We're paying for it in terms of remedial education cost, in terms of a lot of the mental health costs we incur, the criminal justice system cost, substance abuse. I want to point out this, at about 5%, I talk to neurologists, physicians who deal with young babies, pediatric neurologists, and they tell me about 5% of the young children who are born in Maine have diagnosable neurological impairments at birth. Yet about 16% of our children in K through 12 schools are in special education classes. 5%, 16%. So something is happening or not happening during the hospital door and the kindergarten door, and we really need to focus on that. That, by the way, the special ed costs, it's about 10% of our general fund budget. We're paying now about $300 million a year of state general fund money just for special education. And then we have the tens of millions of dollars for the other areas. Actually, I should say hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of the other areas of the remedial expenses that we're incurring. So it's terrifically important, early care and education. In my office, I see, we see the juvenile crime. We have 20 attorneys that do nothing but work in child protective services, work with young children. And then, of course, we have remedial education, mental health, substance abuse. All of these areas cost taxpayers a lot of money. So one of the best ways to reduce taxes is to reduce the need for all the spending. And we can do that, I believe, best by focusing on early care and education.
Okay, in addition to early childhood education, you also believe that Maine's crime rate can be lowered through education. Can you explain your opinion on that?
Well, sure. First of all, let me say a couple of statistics. I mentioned about little boys who watch their dads abuse mom are more likely to abuse their spouses. 80% of all violent offenders in prisons throughout this nation grew up in homes where there was domestic abuse. If you go into the jails tonight, the York County Jail, you'll find about 90% of the inmates there tonight have a substance abuse problem. We know that. That's because we know that. So we see substance abuse, domestic abuse, the two big evils in Maine, I call them. They start back when the child is young. And it's what the child sees during his or her early years and what the wiring of his or her brain. I often say if you could go inside the brain of a 2-year-old, open it up and look at it, and let's say you have a 2-year-old that lives in a home where mom and dad are just great parents. There's consistent adult caregiving, nurturing, stimulation, low stress. If there's an outside the home child care situation, it's a stable situation. If you go inside that child's brain, you're going to open it up, you're going to see the 100 billion neurons, right? The dots floating around. And you're going to see these little, what I would call little microscopic men and women electricians with their hard hats, their tool belts, and their pliers. They're connecting the wires. The neural connections, synapses, form the pathways and networks. That's judgment, decision-making, memory, etc. And they're whistling and humming and everything's great. But you go across town to another home. There's another 2-year-old. It's not the same. Mom and dad, maybe dad's abusing mom. Mom cries a lot. The baby cries a lot. There may be toxins, alcohol, other drugs in the home. The out-of-the-home child care situation is different. It's not stable because there's financial problems. Maybe it's a different person keeping the child every week. That's high stress, that's high anxiety. If you go inside that child's brain, it's very different. You see the 100 billion neurons, you see electricians, but they're not singing, whistling, humming. Some are dead, some are sick, some are hiding, and those who are making wiring mistakes are doing a different kind of wiring. That child is being wired a different way. If you can picture that, that's the difference, and that's why it's so important that our children get a healthy start, cognitively, emotionally, and socially, because it is going to affect the crime rate, substance abuse, remedial education, and all those things down the road in a very real way.